Let me tell you guys a story. In case you can't tell, I struggle with ADHD. In fact, I used to say I suffered from ADHD for most of my life, but now I just more or less enjoy it. It's fantastic, actually. Love it. Love every second of it. But one of the odd symptoms of ADHD is you forget stuff all the time. Waba and Nevi, they know I've left things at their house a billion times. Abby has the same struggle, so like I've had her water bottles for like years. This is the most bizarre thing ever. Never mind, that's a different story. But one day, so one of my biggest struggles is the keys. In fact, there was a lady here, Sue Fast. She comes from St. Peter's, and she gave me a check, and I was trying to find it, and I had absolutely no idea where I put it. And I'm like, this is a check, this is money, and I've lost it. Oh my. I have problems. But it turns out it was right up here, so we're all good. But one of the things that I lose more often than anything else are my keys. And I have a particular fear of losing my keys for a number of reasons. If I can't find my keys, I can't drive, can't get into work, can't get to my house. In fact, speaking of car, I think the worst thing I've lost was when I was in my early 20s, I stayed over at a friend's house, and I parked in the garage, and I don't normally do that. And so when I left the next day, I went out of the house, went to the street, locked the door behind me, by the way. My friend was still asleep, and I realized, oh, my car's in the garage. So I actually lost my car once, and it was literally beneath me. This is terrible, and it's something I've struggled with for most of my life. And now, again, the keys are the biggest issue. And so, what was this, almost 2 years ago now? I had lost my keys, and one of the things that I do is, if I focus too much on it, then I start, like, thinking too hard, and I can never find it. And so what I like to do is I just stop, back off, and sit down and just do something else. And so what I did that day was I started sharpening a knife, because if you're ever bored, the thing you want to do is sharpen a knife. Brilliant. Especially when you're like trying to think of where your keys are. And I was going through the motions of sharpening the knife just to do something relaxing, and then it needed to be done anyway. And I looked down like, boy, it would really stink if I just cut my hand open. And you know what happened? Slice it open right here. You guys can look at the scar later. And my first reaction was, wow, that's a lot of blood. And then I'm also a massage therapist, and I'm really into like anatomy and physiology and whatnot. So then my second thought was, whoa, that's kind of cool. I can see all the layers of tissues and fat. And then the third thought was, ouch! Actually, wasn't that bad. So yeah, knowing more or less what I was doing, I lifted my hand up above my head, ran it over to the kitchen, put my hand in the sink, washed it off, and then again started examining it again. And realized, no, I probably shouldn't do that, so I pinched it shut. And then now I don't have a free hand, what am I going to do? I can't find my keys, so I can't drive to the hospital. So this is an issue for me. And so I call up my friend Jake, who's going to be speaking a little bit later today. And all I asked him was, hey Jake, you want to go on an adventure? And then he says, I'm kind of busy. What kind of adventure do you mean? And I said, well, I'm bleeding a lot, if that gives you any indication. And so he's like, all right, what happened? Just get over here quickly, I gotta go. Because there's like a 45-minute window where you need to get stitches before it starts causing some other issues. And so I get to he picks me up, we go over to the urgent care, which is thankfully like a quarter mile away from my house. And I walk up to the receptionist, and I just pop my hand up, blood streaming down. And I can talk about like this clotting agent thing that's really cool too, but you can talk to me about that later because it's kind of gross. When you bleed a lot, it actually gets really thick and goopy, so to prevent some bleeding, just interesting anatomy stuff. And so my blood all the way down my hand, and I just raise my hand like, ma'am, I have a question. Is this where you go when you're bleeding? She looks at me and rolls her eyes, and they're sitting me down, and because I forget things all the time and I misplace stuff, I couldn't find my insurance card, which is really important when you go to the doctor. And so we're sitting there doing stuff, and recently my wife, we were married not long before it, and I went on her insurance policy because I don't do insurance through my job, and she works for an insurance company, so why would I go with the Archdiocese plan when I've got an insurance company? Anyway, long story short, didn't have all the information I needed up front here, so we had to call my wife, wait like 10 minutes to get, 10-20 minutes for her to call me back, and at the time, I got 6 minutes before I can't get the stitches anymore, there's a problem with the stitches, and so I say, hey, get me into the room to get me stitched up and whatnot. So the doctor pulls me in, and we sit down and lay down on the table, and she starts injecting me with Novocaine, which is, the pain medicine. And the reason for that is because it would really, really hurt to do all the stitches if you didn't have any numbing agent. Now, one of the interesting things about being a redhead, we have superpowers. We do. We produce our own vitamin D at higher levels than other people. We can still be animated yet not have souls, which is absolutely astounding that we can do that. It breaks metaphysics. Now, Scott and I are probably going to have a really hard and long conversation, and he's going to try to lay hands on me with the fivefold ministry, hard, fast, and continuous, until I actually admit that bodies can't move without souls, because it's just how it works. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Anyway, so she is injecting the Novocaine. One of the superpowers that gingers have is that we are resistant to pain medication. I know, super useful. For instance, when I've ever got a tooth pulled, I feel every second of it. And I didn't realize this until later that I needed more Novocaine. And so she sticks me with the Novocaine. The worst part is she slides it all the way up and squirts it down this way. Terribly painful. It honestly hurt worse than cutting my hand open, which wasn't that big of a deal. And so she puts one in, and she's like, yep, still hurts. Please stop poking me. She puts another one in, and then my hand's swelling up like a balloon. Somebody had just injected a ton of stuff in there. And then she puts a third one in there, and finally I can kind of not feel things. And so she had 3 or 4 times the amount of Novocaine that most people get before we could even begin working on my hand. And now I got very upset with her. And I got off the table, flipped it over, and said, how dare you put me in pain to try to make it so that I can have surgery on my hand to fix something that's broken. I was so angry with her. Right? No, that's insane. I promise this will make sense in 2 seconds. Actually, I just want to tell a funny story. Get on with talk now. No. So when we frequently talk about ethics and moral decisions, if you guys had read the flyer, we're going to be talking about a case for natural marriage, which is I want to offer through reason alone. I'm not going to appeal to any divine revelation or church teaching until the end, but that's something different. In order to show that marriage is actually something that occurs only between one man and one woman, and it is a lifelong relationship of loving trust that's open to the conception of children. And from reason alone, we can know this. Reason alone. We don't need anything else. And it's not a social construct, but something that's built into our very nature. So usually when we think about ethics, what we talk about is we just try not to harm people, we try not to hurt people. And I think there's kind of an issue with that, because like Scott was saying before, there are situations me getting my Novocaine in my hand, where putting me in pain is going to be the best thing that you can possibly do. We might not always understand why. For instance, I remember my son, we were sleep training him, getting him out of the bassinet into the crib. It was the worst thing ever. My son gets all my wife's stubbornness, and it's a great thing. My wife's a beautiful person, but she's very stubborn. My son got that because when we were trying to sleep train him, he was not happy about it. Literally, no joke. It took 12 hours the first night to get him to sleep. And the entire time, we're putting him in the crib, and he's just going, screaming, Dada, why are you doing this to me? So he's thinking how can there be a good dad if he's making me not sleep in his arms and cuddle me all night? How could he possibly do that? Well, obviously the thing there was that I, knowing better than he about what's good for him in terms of his independence, was trying to teach him to do this, but it was a lot of suffering for me too. And then, at the time I was wondering, how can there be a good God if my baby doesn't sleep? Which now looking back on it, it's pretty obvious. It actually helped encourage me in a lot of virtue, in growth and virtue. And interestingly enough, it also taught me how much sleep I can not have and still operate functionally as a human being, or at least something that resembles a human being. Excuse me. And so when we talk about morality as primarily avoiding harm, then the question is well, what do you mean? Are there certain kinds? But obviously, prima facie, per se nota, as soon as you understand the terms, there are obvious times when causing harm is actually the best thing for somebody. Why was it the best thing for my doctor to stick a needle in my skin and stitch me up, even though it was terribly painful? Why?
Be less pain?
Should my hand be open and bleeding? No, it shouldn't be. There's something wrong there. And so when we talk about morality, and Scott's already alluded to this, there's a foundational principle without which you can't do anything. It's kind of like you can't do physics without math. Great. You can't count without numbers. You can't multiply if you don't know what 1 and 2 are, okay? Well, you can't do any math without any integers. I know sometimes you'll use symbols and whatnot, but those symbols represent values. Don't worry about that. Same idea. Or chemistry. You can't really do a whole lot of chemistry without the periodic table of elements until then you do alchemy. In which case, if you figure out a way to turn, cheese into gold. It'd be great. Sometimes I'd rather have the cheese. Grilled cheese, tomato soup, Lent, yes, absolutely. Had it last night, it was fantastic. But if you figure out, your alchemy, that's great. But you can't do certain things without these foundational principles. And the foundational principle for all moral decisions, all morality, all ethical considerations, is that we ought to do the good and avoid the evil. And shun it. Do and pursue the good, avoid and shun the evil. Now, that includes everything that we do. In fact, even evil people who do absolutely horrendous things, are following this principle. They're just going about it in the obviously wrong manner. Everybody is desiring and striving towards their own good. They're desiring and striving towards some sort of happiness. Does anybody here not want to be happy? I didn't think so. Does anybody here just want to be miserable? No, I didn't think anybody other than John Paul and that kid back there. You could just leave. You're done. We're done with you. Just kidding. You're great. We can't have a purely evil person. You can't have a purely evil decision because there's always some sort of good. Like even Hitler, he wanted to eliminate all sorts of different people. But why? Because he saw that we needed to have the Ubermensch. We needed to have the Superman, the super race, the master race, which was like the next step in evolution so that we as humans could advance. Now, is advancing as humans a good thing? Yeah. Yeah, otherwise you guys wouldn't go to school. Or get up out of bed in the morning. You have to advance, and it's good for us to do those kind of things. And so even somebody who does terribly evil things has usually good reasons for it. But the question is, if we're supposed to do the good and avoid the evil, it begs the question, well, what's actually good for us? Well, I think that there's a number of ways, and I think, in fact, there's only one reliable way to understand what is good for us. And for that, I will need a volunteer, but not right now. And I already know who the volunteer is because he's going to get voluntold because I have a plan. I have a plan for people. Shh, it's fine, I got it. So I want to draw your attention to this chair. Yes, a simple chair. Used for eons for one particular end. In this situation, it's mine. Laugh, it was a joke. Get it? Fun. Tough crowd, I'm telling you. So what is the purpose of a chair? What is it for? And so a good chair is going to be what? It's going to be comfortable. It's going to hold me up. I remember when my niece was younger. She was tiny, super tiny. And there was this little bear thing my mom had, and the bear was like this big, that thick. And when she was little, she'd take the bear out and then scoot her butt up and sit down on it. And she'd be like the happiest baby ever, just sitting there with her butt in that little chair. And then she hit about a year and a half, and then suddenly her butt got too big. And she was so mad. This was not a good chair for her because it couldn't hold her. I broke a chair at St. Bonnie's a few years ago, but I don't think anybody here was there for that. But a bad chair, an evil chair, one that's not good, is one that's going to fall apart if you sit on it. But a good chair is going to hold you up, it's going to be comfortable, etc., etc. So for the sake of which, the purpose and end of the chair is to sit on. Now I have a question for you guys. Watch this. Ready? I'm bad. Bad to the bone. Boom! Ooh, question for you guys. Have I done evil to this chair? No, it's fine, right? Everything about it is fine. Why? Not because I'm not using the chair for its particular end. I'm using it for another end. But it's not contrary to the nature of the chair, right? Now let's say I took the chair, got to my car, I got to do an oil change pretty soon. Granted, my car company will do that for me. But if I took the chair, leaned it over, put a little rock under it, and started smacking on the leg here, what do you think will happen to this chair pretty quickly? It break apart, fall apart. And in that situation, have I done something evil to the chair? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Great. Now we all understand that all things have a particular end towards which they are moving, towards which they are intended. And this includes living things. For instance, let's make this fairly easy here. What does an acorn tend to do if you just kind of let it do its thing when you plant it in the ground? what does it become?
An oak tree.
An oak tree, exactly. So the end of an acorn is an oak tree. In fact, even the end of an oak tree is also kind of an oak tree, but it's also for the reproduction of more oak trees and whatnot. And so every natural thing has a particular natural end. And so now if I planted an oak tree and then let the sprout come up and then like ripped it up, have I violated the end of that oak tree?
Yes.
Okay, but what do I need to do something good for the sake of the oak tree? What can I do?
Water it.
Water, okay. Great. So water it, maybe put some fertilizer around, make sure I'm taking care of it. Yeah, all those things are great. But let's say I invite, what's your name again?
Caleb.
Caleb, come up here, Caleb. Let's say I invite Caleb up here. And I take him, and then I punch him, knock him out, falls on the ground, I knocked you out. Thanks. That's called stage combat. You notice I punched my hand, I wound up, so Caleb's dead, knocked out. And so I drag him somewhere, and I'm actually trying to do the best thing I possibly can do for Caleb, okay? And so I wrap him up in some of the, like, potter soil wrap, and I take him and I bury him, dump a bunch of fertilizer on him, and every once in a while come on over and come on over and put water all over him. So I'm doing something good, right? No, I'm not. This is not going to work out well for Caleb. So Caleb's here, and I've effectively not done good things for him. This is obviously an evil for Caleb. Why?
He's not a plant.
He's not a plant. He's not an acorn. He's not going to be an oak tree. Now let's say by some happenstance of God's providence and working miracles and whatnot, I do all that, and then suddenly Caleb sprouts out of the ground like a beautiful daisy. Thank you. I chose the right person. This is great. This is almost as good as Bernie. No, stay there. Now, let's say he's not really a tree, but he thinks he is because of the psychological difficulties. I don't know. And then I decided to come by and he's a good-looking guy. But now that he's a tree, he's not so good-looking of a tree. I'm kind of tired of looking at him, and so I take an axe, okay? What is an axe supposed to do? Chop. So I start whacking at Alex.
Caleb?
Caleb! So whacking at Caleb. Have I violated the end of axe? For the sake of which of axe? No, because axe is made to what? It's made to chop, right? However, for the unfortunate soul of Caleb. Sorry. I have done something gravely wrong to him. And in which case I would, bury him again, sprout again, because it happened the first time. Why wouldn't it happen a second time? All right, thank you. I've been calling you up again, Caleb. Get on over there. Thank you. Good job. So I did all that to Caleb, and he's not on the ground. Now what does that tell us? So not only can we with the chair use the thing in a way that's other than its end, without violating its end, we can also use the thing in a way that does violate its end, like jacking up a car. Or we can have one thing, and use another thing in the right way and attack something that destroys it in a different way. And so that's what we've done with Caleb. And it comes to us as well. And so we are now talking about, it was not good for the tree. It was not good for Caleb for me to plant it, right? Mm-hmm. Not beneficial to bury people, for those people. Let's not do that in the future, all right? If you take anything away from the talk, don't bury living people. Please. I don't want that coming back around to me. And so what we're talking about here is end-directedness. Now this isn't me saying, I really like playing first-person shooter games. Like Mass Effect. Any Mass Effect fans here? It's big. Wow, I'm old. Okay, never mind. Yikes. Okay, never mind. There goes an entire analogy. I got to start the talk over again. Just kidding. So for me, you could say it's natural for me to like those things, but not in the same sense. I tend towards liking those things, but that's accidental to what I am, because being a human, does anybody here not play video games? Does anybody here actually dislike video games? I'm sometimes there too, actually, to tell you the truth. And so it's incidental to being human to actually like video games. And so we are not oriented towards liking video games. Okay, great, that's fantastic. But there are some things that we are oriented to. You guys just did something delicious and tasty. What do? You ate. Anybody like the lasagna? That work out for you guys? Get the brownies and cookies and whatnot? If we have any more, you guys are more than welcome to them. But one thing that is good for us is to eat, right? Mm-hmm. All right. What are the natural ends of eating? What can you guys think of?
Energy?
Energy, yeah, it gives us nourishment. Nourishment. We get to eat. Whatever we consume then becomes us, and then we live and become a beautiful tree. No, not normally become more human. Sometimes it is literally more human. And especially in my case, youth ministry, you get something called a youth minister bod. I won't go into exactly some great examples in the Archdiocese, but usually it's like if you sit down, your belly comes up before your knees. That is the final end. That is the goal of what it is to be all youth ministers, to have your belly up past your knee. I actually gained like 30 pounds when I started doing youth ministry. It's ridiculous. You eat pizza 3 times a week and you never run out. Anyway, moving on. So we eat, so nourishment, so we can become, we can still live, we can do everything that we need to do. But there's another part, another end for eating. What is it? Enjoyment. So, wow, are there plants in the crowd? Who did this? You guys, did you sneak and peek at some of my talk? So, we eat food, and it's good for us, right? It's good for us to eat. And then there's pleasure that's associated with food. Now, question, which comes first, the pleasure or the nourishment? Nourishment. So what's the pleasure supposed to do for us?
Entice us to eat.
Just like evolutionarily speaking, or survivalist speaking. Makes you feel good to want to eat more. I didn't ask you, Matt. You're just joking. Thank you. Very good. Hey, buddy, you're my best friend. Sorry about that. So the nourishment and the pleasure that we have is for the sake of the nourishment. And the nourishment itself is for the sake of the whole person, right? Okay, that's very good. Okay, we're great. What else is there about humans? What else can we say about what we are? So we have to eat. What are some other things we have to do?
Breathe.
We have to breathe. Yeah, I mean, it's okay for you to hold your breath sometimes, but if you're holding your breath to the point where you're passing out, you're having some issues, all right? Let's not go home and beg for that new iPod and by holding your breath so you turn blue in the face and pass out and knock your head on the counter. Not beneficial to being a human, all right? So we have to breathe. We have to have shelter. We have to have all these other things to keep our bodies alive. Now, we are not merely animals. We certainly are animals. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. We are not angels trapped in bodies. That's not what we are. But we do have an aspect to what we are that's higher and different from all the other animals. Anybody want to take a shot in the dark what that is?
The soul?
Huh?
The soul?
Animals have souls too. Not the same kind of soul.
We're made in the image of God.
That's true, but we're not going theology yet. We're still stick to philosophy. We do not have a divine soul because there's no such thing as a divine soul.
We have a conscience.
We have a conscience, which is a faculty of your
What? Oh.
intellect.
Right.
Yeah, intellect. So we have intelligence. Now there's something you can analogically call intelligence in animals. I mean, you put a bunch of I've been making fun of my son for this actually recently. You put a monkey in a cage and you give it a couple of blocks and you hang a banana up on top. The monkey's gonna figure out, put those things and climb the blocks and grab the banana. Great. My son too also really likes bananas, and he's about 1.5 years old. And so one of the things that he has been doing recently is he's been taking his buckets from his toys and going over and stepping up on them and climbing stairs to get all the things that he wants. It's always things he's not supposed to have. It's the worst. Why? Why can't you want things that you want to have? Or what you're supposed to have? It doesn't work for me and Mom. Why does it work for you? And it doesn't often. He hurts himself sometimes. So I'm making fun of my son. Stop being as smart as a monkey. Get smarter. Know what you're supposed to do. But when we have, as humans, so what animals do is they're very sensible and they're very particular, and so they have a certain impression from the external world, and they understand there is this chair, there is that chair, there is that tree, that tree, that tree. I don't even know if they categorize it that way, but they understand that there's these individual concrete objects in the world, but they're missing something big. They miss universal truths, and they miss higher truths too. One of the ways I think I can demonstrate this is cats have been around many years, just felines or that genus in particular, cats. And it has taken them that many years to figure out how to bury their poop in the sand. Honestly, yeah, good job, cats. Oh, wow, fantastic. You learned some basics.